All right, and our next guest is another Bryan. Easy to remember. This one is from Maine. Bryan, thank you for coming on, man.
No, not a problem. How you doing, man?
I am good. I am good. A little, still trying to process all that stuff. I mean, there's been a whole lot of information been coming out about everything in the past like week. So, uh, we already got a question down below asking Bryan, did you get into the convention? And I think I can even answer that one saying yes, because I believe I saw you on national television.
Yes, I did make it into the convention. Actually, I was one of the 10 that was left on the list that the RNC 9 state committee picked. So I did make it. I got my credentials every day. Maine was one of the only states that actually had to pick up their credentials on a day-by-day basis. So I actually missed the breakfast with Ron Paul on the first day. I was kind of bummed about that.
Well, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you've become involved with the Ron Paul campaign, when you started, and what happened this year, basically, because you saw everything firsthand up in Maine. I mean, you literally were down in the pit fighting to become a delegate and to make sure this all happened. So I want to hear it from your perspective.
Sure. I first got involved in September. I went down to a local meeting and, I met Eric Brakey, who was one of the state organizers here. And then not soon after that, I sort of got drafted to do the Penobscot County coordination with Sam Canders. And, from there, it was a learning experience. I'd never been involved with a national campaign at all on that level. I supported Dr. Paul back in 2008, but I was more one of those sideline supporters that would more or less write stuff and talk about it rather than go out and be about it. And so this time around, I really wanted to make sure I was involved firsthand and could change things with my hand and not just my heart. And so after that, we really did a great job organizing in Maine. I have to say that that's the main reason why we won was we had just supporters that would go to the hilt for any of the events and causes that we were trying to promote. And we also, we were really organized. We were a well-oiled machine. It's funny because looking back on a lot of the stuff, it's almost like we're all riding on unicorns and farting rainbows, excuse me. But, you know, we think we have such high hopes for, so, the process and integrity and that people will respect the rules. And, obviously a lot of what I learned this year was they'll keep poking you with that dagger until either you leave or you die. So, there was a lot of good lessons there. I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with a lot of things that occurred here in Maine from our straw poll, disenfranchisement, voter fraud, from everything at our state convention to where, you had Romney supporters and other supporters that were, trying some tactics that were less savory. And, it's pretty well documented on YouTube and as well as on mainforronpaul.org.
Now, I received some messages from you in the past when Maine was getting basically uh, fought for from the Romney campaign. You were talking about how you thought that there is some type of, I guess, not something natural that the Ron Paul campaign was doing or not doing to fight back. Was that correct?
Well, I had my concerns there. There was a big lapse of information getting back and forth from the campaign to, the actual delegates on the ground. I felt that there could have been a lot more done and we could have been a little bit more prepared and maybe part of it was being left out of the loop really from the campaign's perspective. And then, you read these stories and you see these things and you wonder why things aren't catching on. And, as far as the campaign is concerned, I think they did, I don't know, I feel indifferent still. I feel like they could have done a lot better job. But at the same token, I am proud of them stepping up at the last moment to try to help out some of the delegations. We have to remember that the power of the national delegates have been, basically eroded over the last 48 years since 1964. They've been trying to plug away and streamline this system to take it from a convention to really what we have today as a coronation. And, they've done that systematically. In 1988, they sort of got rid of the vice presidential nominations, and, they do a lot more by acclamation. Even while we were down in Tampa, a lot of the buses that were taking people to these events, they were asking, the RNC was asking them to basically sign over their rights as delegates so they could do everything by either what's called acclamation, which is just a rubber stamp. So if it comes down to a vote, they don't even have to bring it to the vote because they already have 2/3 majority. So, like I said, I'm not going to despairingly talk bad about the campaign. I think there's a lot of people that do that. Whether there's a valid concern for that or not, I'll leave that up on everybody's individual, appeal to it. So.
I think it's very important that we do talk about the downfalls and the bad things that actually did take place this year and possibly in 2008, because we need to learn from it. We need to make sure that we don't do the same mistakes over come 2016. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be in the Ron Paul campaign come 2016, but whoever we are supporting, we need to make sure that we do not make the same mistake with the grassroots. There wasn't a very steady flow of information going back and forth, and there's a little bit of a lapse sometimes. That's something that we all need to work on and make sure that we do let them know ahead of time that, hey, we want to be very involved, and then if they stop and they don't actually start doing that, we need to be the ones to hold them accountable and make sure that they do continue or resume sharing and just basically doing everything they can to make sure we're all on the same page.
And I agree with you. I mean, really one of the biggest things, the downfalls that we had was the miscommunication. And, we can go back and say, geez, that was a horrible time for Romney or for Rand Paul to endorse Romney. There's a lot of different things that had happened over the time. But I think what it boils down to is a lot of these candidates, regardless who they are or what they're running for, they have a circle around them, and it's there for protection as well as it's their political consultants. They get paid for the job. At some point, they have to look at where their next paycheck is coming from. So do they, break the eggs to make the omelet, or do they just sort of, let it all fall by the wayside and let the eggs rot? And I think there was a little bit of both in this. I really do. I think, from talking to people, I was involved with a core delegates group that, it was more of a grassroots group that tried to identify pluralities for all the states and to make sure that just in case the campaign did just leave us all by our lonesome, that we would already have the ground organization to make sure that we could at least get the nomination for Ron Paul. So, I mean, there was a lot of work in the background there. I know the campaign was kind of upset about it being taken out of their control. And that's really what everything boils down to, is control. If they feel that they can't control you or control your actions or control what you say, then, people try to nix you. They want to make sure that it's not going to be egg on their face.
Yeah, they definitely want to make sure that anything that would be associated with them is not going to tarnish or leave any type of negativity on their reputation or anything like that. But I believe that Ron Paul, of all people, and I believe he does know this, he should know that the grassroots are going to do what the grassroots want to do. That's what makes them grassroots. They're just not the sheep that fall in line and follow whatever the campaign is going to say or tell them to do. So I think that's important, that we need to continue that too. We need to always be independent and not worry about what the campaign is doing. We need to do what's going to be best for us. And if the campaign doesn't follow through on their promises, then I'm sorry, we're done with that campaign. We need to find someone that's going to understand that if they want to represent the grassroots, they're going to have to let the grassroots do what the grassroots does and actually be themselves and not just be the putty in their hands that they want everyone to be.
Well, I think when you decentralize I've worked with a lot of different groups over this last year, And, you know, it's one of the most difficult aspects of everything that I'm involved with is, you know, especially when you talk about liberty-minded people, because it's like herding cats. You know, everybody has their own individuality, which we all respect, you know, and we have, you know, choices that we have to make and responsibilities, and we want to make sure that we do things ethically right and that we want to do the same things that these groups of people are doing to us, you know. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you don't lose grasp of that, and that you're concentrating that you're doing this for the right reason rather than, you know, some political ambition, or, you know, for an article, or, you know, even for an interview or something, you know. So decentralized groups, I think, are good. And then going back together as a larger group and working together. That, you know, you have to work collectively, and you have to trust the people that you're working with, and, you know, that plays a big part of it, you know.
Yeah, I agree. You don't happen to have that video clip that's up on YouTube where I don't know if it's before or after the interview, but you're talking about how you were talking to all the main delegates basically in your group, and you were very emotional during that. I can't find that anywhere, and I'd love to use that. Do you have that?
Um, yeah, I'll have somebody post it there in the link. Yeah, you know, I'll tell you what, it's sad because that one video that you played earlier, it's got like 180,000 views, and my own kids have never seen me cry until that point. So, you know, to have that go viral on that point, you know, it's a hardship to see that, but and it definitely evokes a lot of the emotions that were there today. I mean, it wasn't just that occurrence. I mean, when I first got down there, you know, everything was, we weren't really told what was really going on, what the RNC would do. They, you know, they basically changed their rules 3 or 4 times to, you know, accommodate the challengers in the case. And then they ultimately, you know, in the credentialing committee, just blew us out of the water. And that was really disheartening that day. And then we went back through, and, you know, just everything that we had that transpired that whole week. It was really an emotional week. And by the time that, you know, we got to day 2 of the convention, and we were on the floor, and, you know, we had our amendment that we wanted to have an up and down vote on for the credentialing committee to get the rest of our delegates sat. And we made sure that we put that in a timely fashion. We actually had somebody follow the guy into the back room, you know, to make sure that they turned those in. And sure enough, when it came time to vote for the credentialing report, you know, and we already had our whip that was there, they provided by the RNC. You'll notice that they all had the Romney caps on and stuff. But, you know, we had told him before that we were hoping to have the mic turned on so that we could make this objection, you know, hours before this. And, you know, finally, like 5 minutes before the vote, he came back up and he's like, oh, no, we're not allowed to turn the mics on unless, you know, the campaign makes some agreement with RNC. And that's not following any of the rules, you know. And so, you know, right then we were on the fly. We had to act on the fly. And as soon as that came out, we, you know, there was, you know, tons of objections. You know, you only need one, but they would never turn the mic on. I actually, Brent Tweed, our delegation chair, and he was the chair to our convention here in Maine, he reached back and he's like, grabbed the phone and called back to this back room. So that's what I'm doing. I called back, and sure enough, you know, I don't know if they just put the handset on the ground and let me talk, but I ended up reading the same amendment that Brent Tweed was reading on the floor. You know, they completely ignored us there. We were at a crossroads as a delegation trying to decide whether, you know, do we stay for the rules fight? Do we just leave after they, you know, after they cut our people? Or, you know, at what point is it best for us to go? And I have to say that it was the best part about that week was knowing that, you know, I've worked with a lot of great people up here, and to see that there's so many other great people in all these other states, Jeremy Blosser, Jay Lake from Nevada, I mean, Texas, Oklahoma, I mean, all of them. They're just some great people. And so the last thing we wanted to do was, you know,